Hey guys, another question that gets asked, and once again, I've got a friend who's getting into archery, so it kind of sparked me to make these videos just to keep me honest. Um, so, another question I get asked is, how long should my arrow be? Well, there's really no one right answer to that. Once again, there is somewhat of preference involved in that in your arrow building when it comes to the length of your arrow. First and foremost, the absolute most important part of the length of your arrow is it has to overhang your rest at a minimum. Has to go past your rest. So what does that mean? So your arrow rest here. When your arrow rest is deployed upward, and this is hard because this is a Hamskea, so it's limb driven. So it's gonna give me a second. So I've got my arrow in here, right? When this is deployed, so when you're, I don't know if you guys can see this too well or too good. So here, let's change this up a little bit. So when my arrow is drawn back and this comes up into place like so, and it's being held up, my arrow needs to, at a minimum, be overhanging that rest when it's deployed at a minimum. If not, if it goes back and you let that arrow go, what, man, it could jump the rest, it could go into your hand that's holding your bow. It's not safe. So for safety, your arrow length needs to be past your rest. Now, what I personally like to do, since I shoot fixed blade broadheads, you look here on the riser shelf where your hand is at. If you're properly holding your bow, my finger is going to be exposed here. And let's just face it, the broadhead's going to have blades hanging down that are razor sharp, so you want to be safe and not cutting your hand. So what I personally like is I like to have my arrow cut to where once it's on and I'm drawn fully back, I like to have my arrow cut to where right here, the very end of the arrow, is just about even. These arrows are actually a little bit further back. They're about a 1/4 inch off of the forward end of my riser, but that's how I cut mine. Mainly just so my broadhead sticks out in front of my hand, and I don't have to worry about it getting cut, and I also don't have to worry about overdrawing the bow while I've got an arrow on it by accident and having an arrow jump off while I'm full draw. That's a recipe for a bad day. Getting an arrow in your hand is the absolute last thing you want to do when you're out in your backyard or out in a field shooting. So I would highly recommend having your arrow cut even with the forward end of your riser. So once again, just so we know the anatomy here of the bow, this is your rest here. So when you're looking at this part that comes up when it's deployed, when you're at full draw, is your rest. You want your arrow at a minimum past that. Best case scenario for me personally is I go even with the forward end of my riser here. Best case scenario. If you're now, if you're someone who is big on arrow weight and things of that nature, given that extra 1/2 inch of an arrow or whatnot, depending on if you're wanting to be lighter or you're wanting to be heavier, having that little bit of extra arrow hanging off can kind of dictate where you cut it. For instance, I've got a 30 and a 1/2 inch draw, which is pretty long. So from on my arrows though are cut at 29 inches. So draw length, you can't just say, oh, I've got a 30-inch draw length, I need 30-inch arrows. It's not the case. With a 30-inch draw length, my arrow that I have here is sticking past my rest about 1.5 inches at my arrow being cut right at 29 inches. So that's a just food for thought on that. There's the long and short answer that I just gave for that is simple. There is a minimum of how short it should be because of safety driven reasons. As far as how long it should be, you can get into that argument with people. End of the day, as long as you're protruding past your arrow rest, you're safe. I'm not going to try to tell you should always cut them 1.5 inches past your arrow rest, or you should cut them 2 inches past your arrow rest. That would just be unrealistic given whatever it is that you're wanting your system to operate with. I can only tell you what I do, and that is I cut just even or just shy of the forward end of my riser shelf. If you have any questions or if you have a comment, drop it down below. Thank you.